know it's working. For sure. Sandrine, great to see you.
Morning.
How are things? You got the family together for the holidays, or is Ariel up in
We're going to Chicago.
oh, beautiful. Rosh Hashanah? Yom Kippur? Got it. Beautiful. By the way, if you see anybody, I'm sorry, I was gonna say, if you see anybody wandering, just let me know and we'll chap them. Yeah. It's great interrogation glass. We can see them.
There's a group of people out in the parking lot, but they've been wandering around out there for 40 years.
And there's this guy with a staff. He doesn't know, he doesn't look like he knows where he's going either. All right, let's jump in. So nice and bright
I
behind me.
saw some guy with a stick hitting a rock. I don't know what that's about.
Who knows what he's doing? All right. I hope you called like security. We don't want any of that happening here. All right.
Comment on security guard from yesterday.
Well, that I don't know, but all right, let's jump in. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. And of course, good morning to our live audience. Okay, let's begin. All right, this is Kabbalah Cafe, and we are exploring a very, very special discourse that's talking all about the holidays. So the first thing I want to mention is the following. We're going to start, today's topic is servant leadership, but really it's also about, thank you, Boker Tov. It's also about the corruption of energy, the corruption of spiritual energy, and I'm going to explain what that means. So one of the big doctrines, and if you've studied some Kabbalah, if you've studied Chassidus or Kabbalah, so you know this to be true, and that is that the world is comprised of 10 distinct spiritual energies. And when I say the world is comprised of 10 distinct energies, what I mean is that there are 10 energies with which God created the universe. These are known as the 10 sfirot. Imagine like an artist who's painting a beautiful masterpiece and using paint, using different colors. So this is akin to the way Kabbalah describes the process of creation. Creation happens through this melding of energies that are woven together by God to create the universe. These are known as the 10 sfirot. Sfirot, by the way, the word sfira means either to count, to shine, to illuminate, luminescence, and that is the idea of a sphere. Sphere is basically divine energy. Now, these 10 energies, the way they exist in the original source, the way they exist from God's perspective or on God's side, is absolutely, these energies are absolutely pure. When I say pure, what I mean is that they are uncorrupted. They are just sends people Zoom link. They're uncorrupted, they are pure, and they are holy. But the problem is, once these energies filter down into our reality, now you have the possibility for corruption. The truth is, you have this in every area of life. With every great tool comes the possibility for great corruption. You have incredible tools of energy and power that could also be used to destroy the world, right? You have tools of technology and information that could be used to destroy lives, right? You have great power. What's the language? With great power comes great responsibility, right? It's like everything that's big can go either way. It can go big for the good. It can go big for the opposite. So that's the way life works. That's the way these energies work, is that you have these big energies. That's the way the sfirot work. You have these big energies, these 10 energies that can be used for the good or for the negative. So today we're going to talk about the corruption of these energies. I'm going to do 3 examples. And the third example is going to be the one that we focus on in our mystical text as we talk about it, as we try to frame the idea of servant leadership. So the first element that we'll speak about is love, because of the 10 sfirot, we have 3 intellectual, chachma, bina, and das, or dat, which form the acronym Chabad. Then you have the 7 emotive energies, chesed, gevura, tiferet, netzach, hod, yisod, and malchut. These are the 7 emotional energies. So Chachma, just to go quick translation, Chachma, Bina, and Dat typically are translated as wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, although that doesn't mean much. It doesn't differentiate much in English. In the original conception of what Chachma, Bina, and Dat means, these are referring to 3 abilities, 3 cognitive abilities. The number 1, Chachma, is creative intelligence, coming up with new ideas. Say you're running, morning, good to see you. Let's say you're running, welcome. Let's say you're running a business. We got the coffee station and the breakfast over there. Sure. So let's say you're running a business and you want to come up with new ideas to bring customers in. You want new ideas, new products, right? We have an inspiration right here. Jeff is always coming out with new ideas. And so Chachma is creativity. Bina is, how do we make this work? Bina is analytical wisdom, is how we understand something, break it down to its components, and try to make it work. So Bina is very much about application. So Chachma is kind of like creative brainstorming, and Bina is, how do we filter that? How do we take that dream and understand it in a very linear, organized fashion? That's what Bina is. And that is application. That is how we feel about how we start moving into the space of feeling. That is really connecting with an idea. The difference between knowing something and it having to do with you, it affecting you in a very deep way, that's where that comes in. You can know something, and it may not mean anything. It's just studying a Hasidic discourse on Shabbos, and it was the Alter Rebbe, the founder of Chabad. He quotes the Talmud. The Talmud says, I'll tell you the Aramaic because it rolls off the tongue very nicely. It says, Ganva apum machtarta rachmana karya. And I know what you're thinking. Gesundheit. No, I'll tell you what it means. Ganva, what's a ganav? Thief. Apum machtarta. Okay, that's gonna be harder. When he's burrowing through a hole, you like old school thieves, not like cyber criminals and like don't no ransomware and hacks and identity theft. That's way too modern. Yeah, that's new school. Old school was you took by the way, we're not advocating for any of this type of that. I'm just saying, but like old school was you took a shovel back in the day, you took a shovel and you dug and you made a hole, you made a tunnel underneath someone's property and you popped in someone's property. Like the good old days. Again, not advocating for any of this. And the truth is, if you were going to burrow under someone's property and come up the other side, what were you concerned about? What do you think? Okay, none of us would do this. But what might you be concerned about? Yeah, when you pop up the other side, how do you know that the homeowner is not there with a shotgun? Right? Again, in Talmudic times they didn't have a shotgun, but I'm sure they had equally nefarious weapons. So the point is, ganva apum machtarta, when the ganif is digging, welcome. When the ganif is digging in, when the ganif is burrowing in under the home and is about to pop through, you know what he does? Rachmana karya. Rachmana is a euphemism for God. Rachmana karya, he calls out to God. He says, God, Hashem, please make sure, please let this be successful. Now, by the way, in case you think this is a little bit cray-cray, right? Someone's breaking the law, someone's defying God's will, and then asking God for success in defying God's will. I mean, if only we couldn't relate, right? I mean, how many times have we been, okay, it's a safe space, present company excluded, but don't we know people that have done things that maybe aren't so, less than perfect? And we say, wow, I really hope no one finds out about this. Please, God, let no one find out about this. In the meantime, we're asking God for help to do something that God certainly does not want for us to do. Good morning. Good to see you. So what's the point? The point is that human beings can be very inconsistent in our beliefs, because we might believe in something to the point that we'll even offer a prayer, but it won't necessarily change behavior. We'll profess something, but we won't actually be it. Bertrand Russell, the great philosopher, he was also a mathematician. I've shared this story many times, but I love this story, so I'll share it again. Bertrand Russell, he taught ethics. I think he also taught philosophy, ethics, mathematics, taught everything. But he taught ethics that's specifically relevant to this conversation. And it turns out that he did something, he was engaged in some activity that was less than ethical. So one of his colleagues called him out on it, said, you teach ethics and you're steeped in this unethical behavior. And so his response was, I teach trigonometry as well, and I'm not a triangle, right? In other words, his response was, his retort was, you can teach, but you don't have to be it. In other words, I can teach trigonometry, I don't have to be a triangle. I can teach ethics. I don't have to be ethical. Who says I have to be ethical? Who says? Maybe it's up for debate. Maybe it's up for consideration. Anyway, the point is that it's possible as we go through life, it's very possible that we believe in things, but it's not connecting with us. It's not grounded in our experience. In other words, morning. In other words, there's no dot. The dot is missing. That is where it gets really connected and integrated with you. So I might know about a worthy cause. In theory, I understand it and I appreciate it and I value it. But in practice, the question is, in practice, do I respond to it? Do I connect with it in such a deep way that it actually affects my life and I affect it, and we have this relationship? The point is like this. We have these energies. These energies are all powerful. These energies are not only interwoven in the fabric of the universe, they're also interwoven into the fabric of the human soul. When the Torah tells us that the human being is created, B'Tselem Elokim, in the image of God, and all the commentators are wondering, what does that mean? Does God look like us? Right? Who? Us? Or him? Okay.
I'm not taking my
Yeah.
before Rosh Hashanah.
Yeah, right. It's a hedging all bets, right? You know, there's that line, what if God was one of us? The question is like, is that what we're saying? That we're creating the image of God and God looks like us? The mystics explain, the Kabbalists explain, no. What it means, but B'Tselem Elokim, in the image of God, means just like God employs 10 energies, Sfirot, to create the world. We also have those energies within us. So we have Chachma, Bina, and Dat. We have Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yisod, Malchut. We have these energies within us. So again, today I want to focus on how these energies exist in their pure state and in their corrupted state, and all of this understand the idea of leadership from a Jewish, mystical, Chassidus, Kabbalah perspective. Okay, so let's start with Chesed. We're going to do, as I said at the beginning, we're going to do 3 energies today. Chesed, Gevurah, and then we're going to fast forward to Malchut. We're going to go from the emotional energies, the 7 emotional energies, 1, 2, and then fast forward to 7, just for the sake of expediency. Chesed, what is Chesed? Chesed is love. The problem is love is a very misunderstood term. Why? Because most people, I can't say most, very often, love is actually distorted 180 degrees. So the best way that I can set this up is by quoting, I think it's Rabbi Dr. Torsky, who gave the analogy of fish love. You know what fish love is? Fish love. What is fish love? So there was once a rabbi who was in the yeshiva, and he went down to the cafeteria, and he sees a yeshiva student eating lunch with lots of gusto. Does anyone use that word? Gusto? I don't know. We're using it this morning. It's a good word. It's a decent word. Gusto. All right. Lots of gusto. Lots of verve. Verve? Gusto? Gusto's better. All right. We'll stick with gusto. And this guy's eating and he's into it. And so the rabbi goes over to him and says, so are you enjoying lunch? The young man, this yeshiva bacher, the yeshiva student says, oh, I love fish. I love fish. Rabbi says to him, you don't actually love fish. Because if you loved fish, you would be taking care of fish. You would be feeding the fish. You'd be tending to the fish's needs, right? You would be caring for the fish. You wouldn't be devouring the fish. It's not loving fish. That's loving yourself. You enjoy the taste of fish. That's not loving fish. 2 different things. In other words, that's what fish love is. What is fish love? Fish love is the opposite of what love is. So love is an energy that is meant or that does radiate from inside outside. Love is an energy that radiates from inward toward outward. It radiates in the direction away from the person. It's about giving. It's about extending. It's about sharing. So love is an energy of me moving outside of myself into the space of someone else. So, and the problem is really in English, when we say I love you, who comes first in that equation? I love you. Somebody says, I love you. I love you. You make me feel so amazing. You make me want to get out of bed in the morning and do amazing things. You complete me. Fish love. Straight up fish love. It's great. It's great to have that, but that's not what love, that's not the definition of the energy of love according to Kabbalah. According to Kabbalah and Chassidus, love is, if we were drawing a directional arrow, it's from inside. The arrow points outside. It points outward, not inward. Love doesn't mean let me take. Love means let me give. Now, I understand that the word love has been, what's the word? Has been, yeah, but no, appropriated. Appropriated?
What is it, love, ahava?
Yes.
That's
Well,
beyond love?
yeah, chesed is definitely more of the giving kindness is about chesed. Right, chesed makes it easier to understand. There is an overlap between chesed and ava, which I'm taking that liberty to overlap them. But essentially they're the same thing. Chesed for sure is about giving. Chesed is not about taking. It's like chesed, let me take. Chesed is about giving, but avas in a similar way is also about giving. It's about extending. It's not necessarily about the action of giving, but it's about the emotion of giving, of extending outward. So love has been appropriated in our society in many different ways that are not accurate to its initial or its pure intention. Because most of the time, a person says, I love chocolate. You don't love chocolate. You enjoy eating chocolate. You don't love chocolate. If you love chocolate, you would be hugging chocolate, right? It's not right? You guys with me on this?
It's like when the kids say they love something and the common answer is, well, they want to be married.
Right. Right. Yeah. Along those lines. Right. In other words, love is really about, I once heard a definition of love. Love is a feeling of closeness and the desire to get closer to that thing. But it's not about consuming. Consuming is a selfish experience. Consuming is I'm taking. Love is more about I'm giving. So that's love. So love in its purest form is about extending, bestowing, is about connecting outward toward another. By the way, that's why love is inseparable from respect. Because love can quickly get corrupted to become very selfish. For example, remember the 22,000 students of Rabbi Akiva who died in the Sfira to Omer time period after Pesach, before Shavuot? That's what we have a mini period of mourning every year in commemoration of that tragedy. 22,000 students of Rabbi Akiva passed. And the questions asked is, how does it make sense? Rabbi Akiva was the one who taught. The Torah says, love your fellows yourself. And Rabbi Akiva said, Zek klal gadol b'Torah. This is the great principle of the entire Torah. How could it be, irony of irony, that his own students were the ones? Oh, I'm sorry. The Talmud says that why did they die? I forgot to fill in this important piece of information. Why did the 22,000 students of Rabbi Akiva die at that time period? Because shaloi nagu kavod zelazeh. Because they did not treat each other with respect. Respect. Hi, Ray. How's it going? Hi. Hey, good morning. So they didn't treat each other with respect.
Sort of like the destruction of the basic income.
Exactly. That always gets us every time. Hey, good to see you. Good morning. So they didn't treat each other with respect. And the question is, as the Rebbe asks, how could it be, again, it's so ironic that Rabbi Akiva's students couldn't love each other. How could they not get along? Their rabbi was the one who taught, love your fellows yourself, is the guiding principle of the Torah, and they couldn't get along? How does that make sense? So the Rebbe answers, no, they loved each other, but they couldn't stand each other. They loved each other, and that's why they couldn't stand each other. Because love and respect sometimes are at odds because, again, love can be corrupted. So what does that mean? They loved each other. And what does that, how did that translate into action? The way it translated into action is that everyone has their perspective. Everyone has their, in general, on Torah, on life, on everything. So when they encountered their fellow who had a different perspective, the Talmud says, just like there are no two faces that are alike, likewise, there are no two perspectives that are alike. Literally, the Talmud says that, draws a comparison between faces and perspectives. So when one of these students of Rabbi Akiva encountered a fellow student that had a different opinion, so out of love, that student sought to change the mind of the other student and tell them why they were wrong. You're wrong because I love you, so I want to make sure that you have the truth. In other words, I love you so much, I want you to be like me. It's fish love, it's selfish love, it's self-directed love. I want you to be like me. It's not love, it's like it's taking, it's not giving. So they were missing respect. They didn't respect each other. That was the problem. Respect means that you allow space for difference and you can still find closeness in the distance. So just in language, when somebody says something that you agree with, you might say, I love that. When somebody says something that you disagree with, in a healthy scenario, you might say, I respect your opinion. In a healthy scenario, you might say, I respect. You won't say I love because it's different. So love is about closeness, respect is about distance, and we really need both. We need love and respect. So my point is that love is the first energy, chesed, which is about love and giving and kindness. So it can be it's very susceptible to corruption. And the corruption, again, we're talking about corruption of these divine, spiritual, and soulful energies. The corruption of chesed is where we turn the chesed inward and we make it about us. We make it about us and fish love and how I feel and how it helps me and how it benefits me, as opposed to pure love that is more of the unconditional giving side. That's love. What about gvura? So gvura is discipline. Gvura is discipline. It's about boundaries. It's about saying no, etc. But gvura can also quickly slip into a very ugly place. And the way gvura goes into ugliness is extreme sternness or anger or rage. Now, if we lived in a perfect world, we wouldn't even know what these words meant. What's anger? What's rage? What's losing control? I have no idea. Gvura is about setting boundaries, but it's not about losing control. The corruption of gvura is when gvura spins. So gvura, which is this, see, gvura is the modality of creating boundaries, creating rules, creating guidelines. Okay, what happens when those guidelines aren't exactly the way you like them? How do you respond to that? Is that okay, or is that like? So gvura can end up being judgmental and angry and petty and rageful and all of these negative things. Love can be corrupted, chesed can be corrupted, gvura can be corrupted. Having a conversation with somebody on Shabbos, we were talking about parenting. So what happens when the kid, again, present company excluded, but what happens when a kid gets out of control in a public setting? So you're shopping. The child is not in a happy space. You're probably wondering what happens. The child's not in a happy space. That's what's happening. How does a parent react?
Redirect them.
Well, that's for sure. That is in some synagogues, the Candyman is the dentist, and that's just straight up lead generation. Anyway, sorry, what was that? Ray, what did you say?
You redirect them.
But you're talking about healthy. Ray, you're way too healthy for us. That's way too healthy. No, but I'm saying, what's a natural reaction? So this was a discussion that happened on Shabbos, and so there's one there's one possible scenario where, or one possible reaction where a parent becomes very self-conscious of the child and is now, for lack of a better term, upset at the child for making a scene because now the parent looks bad. Interesting. You with me on this? Again, safe space. Present company excluded. This is not, no one here has ever been in that space, but it's possible that a parent might be in that space where you're in the supermarket. The child is a little bit, exuberant. And the parent might be feeling like, shh, keep it down. I mean, that's a calm way of saying it, right? But like getting triggered by the child's trigger and by the fact that the parent now looks like the child's not a perfect child, the parent's not a perfect parent. Everybody knows it's totally revealed, expose on aisle 4, right? All I was doing was buying sushi. This is not a personal, right? And now this whole thing is blowing up. And then we sometimes take it out on the kid, right? Sometimes it is taken out on the child. So what's going on? What's going on is that instead of dealing with the child in a way that is completely focused on the child's needs, the child needs direction or redirection or parenting. Instead of that, the parent is making it about themselves. How do I look? How do I feel? The first rule of parenting, in my new parenting book, the first rule of parenting is your kids are not about you. It's not about you. Hashem has entrusted very small, at least they start off very small, vulnerable, etc. beings for you to take care of and to raise. That's it. It's not about making you look good or feel good, or it's not about you. If you want to feel good about yourself, there's many ways to do that. There's many ways to have that experience. Children it's about helping raise healthy, self-sustaining children. The fact that they're upset, so now they've been triggered by something. I'm going to get triggered by the fact that they're triggered. How does that make any sense? I'm going to get triggered by their trigger. I have one role. My one role is to help guide and take care. I once had a speaker years ago at an event locally who said the following, such an amazing thing. He said, when somebody is shouting, it's a sign that they're in pain. Right? Our typical reaction is somebody's shouting, we shout back. But shouting is a sign that someone's in pain. So imagine someone's, God forbid, lying on the ground with a broken arm and crying in pain. What are you going to do? Scream at them? And yet when someone's in emotional pain and shouting toward us, we shout at them? Why? Where's the compassion? It's not about us, right? How can we help? Certainly with parents and children, it's about helping. My point is that whether it's love or whether it's discipline, whether it's chesed or whether it's gevura, it's very easy to corrupt these energies. It's very easy to corrupt these modalities and move to a negative place. In their pure form, they're pure and beautiful. Chesed is chesed and gevura is gevura. Love is love and discipline is discipline. It's all healthy and it's all perfect. It's all pure. It's in its healthy state. In its unhealthy state, it's manifest as all sorts of drama. Okay, so that takes us to energy number 7 or number 10. In the larger count, number 10, but in the emotional count, energy number 7. It's really not an emotional energy. It's more of a pragmatic energy, but that is the energy. The final sphira is the sphira of malchut or malchus, which means royalty, kingship, leadership. So what is leadership? Again, There's what it means in Kabbalah or Chassidus in its pure form, and then there's the way that it's distorted, the way it is on the ground, sometimes distorted. So leadership, although I think today there's a lot of ink that has been spilled, a lot of podcasts that have been presented and seminars that have been charged for on the topic of leadership. But it's important to understand a Jewish concept of leadership. Leadership is not dictatorship. Those are two different things. Dictatorship is where somebody is trying to control, trying to oftentimes manipulate something and coerce behavior. That's what dictatorship is. That's not leadership. So when we think of leadership, we think of a king. You have a king now. You excited?
Let's see how it comes out.
How long have you been in England?
England.
Yeah.
My whole life.
Nice. Nice. Yeah. It's a big deal. So when we think of a king, I think Queen Elizabeth, she was a nice lady, right?
Yeah.
By all accounts.
Nobody had anyone bad to say.
Yeah.
about her.
Yeah. The tabloids like this, but that's about the family drama. Yeah.
But they never had anything.
Yeah, not about her. Yeah. It's amazing.
Correct.
Yeah.
She was just.
Pretty amazing. Pretty amazing.
Yes, it seems like she's had two of her children doing the version you're speaking of the 2-year-old tantrum in the grocery store.
Right. You've also had that, correct? Her children or her grandchildren? Oh, her children?
One of each.
Oh, one of you. Oh man, yeah. I probably need to follow a little bit more closely to know all the ins and outs. But when we think of leadership, we think of basically. No, I think it's Inquire's here. I think it's whatever they have. Daily Mail, Sun. So you have there's this notion that a king, at least historically, kings have been brutal. Kings have been like devastatingly brutal and corrupt. I mean, we've overthrown over the years, over the centuries. There have been movements to overthrow the monarchies in various places because of how corrupt and bloody they were, right? Sandrine. Am I right? We had a French Revolution. Wasn't that against the king? Yeah. That didn't end well, though. Whatever.
Like King Saul, we asked for a king that we kind of regretted.
Right. Yeah. Even Jewishly. I mean, how many generations of Jewish kings were there before corruption? Saul, David, Solomon. I mean, Saul had his own issues, but not in that type of corruption. David, Solomon, and then Rehoboam, Solomon's son. The kingdom split, and that was it. 2 kingdoms, northern and southern. Anyway, whether we know the history that well or not, the point is that it's you know what they say, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts, absolutely. Right? That's the line. So there's this natural, you know, when you put any of these tools in the hands of human beings, all bets are off. All bets are off. And the same thing is true with the idea of leadership and power. Oftentimes it goes to a very dark place, a very ugly place, which is why for many people, the notion of kingship, you know, sovereignty is associated with, you know, whoa, I don't know if we want someone with that power. I mean, our government here in the United States is literally a system that divides power in 3 branches for that reason. We broke away from England. We still love you guys. But
will that go away?
yes, yeah, no. We'll have that. We'll have a king, as it were, but it's going to be in a healthy way because Mashiach means a healed world. So all of the corruption that filters in. I want to also let me just explain why there is corruption. I once heard this beautiful idea. Rabbi Steinsaltz shared this. He said, in our world, you cannot have light without shadow. You cannot have beauty without ugliness. You just can't have it. For example, like it's kind of like the mind gets a little bent here. If you want to create a cup, if somebody wants to make a cup, why? Because you want to hold, which we're going to get into today, cups and malchut and femininity. But anyway, a cup, right? What do you want? You want the inside. You want to contain, I have here at this point, like lukewarm water. So you have a cup, you want it for the inside. But you can't create an inside without an outside. You with me on this? Okay, here's the problem. We live in such a superficial world that people will buy cups just for the outside. That's where we are. You guys with me on this? We'll buy a cup just the way it looks on the outside. A cup, by definition, should be about a receptacle to contain, which means that all you really need is an inside. But you can't create an inside without an outside. You can't have what you want without something that you don't want. You can't have good without evil. You can't have light without shadow. You just can't have one without the other. That's just the way it works. There's a necessary balance, as it were, between the good and the opposite. That's just the way life is. So here's the point. When it comes to leadership, when it comes to kingship, there is the way it looks purely, and then the way it's been corrupted. And we know corruption. Also, back to 3 branches of government. So we have the executive branch, legislative branch, judicial branch in our country, right? And each one checks and balances. I'm channeling my inner social studies class from like 5th grade or 6th grade, right? Or whatever, whenever it's taught, right? 3 branches of government. Oh, and also my wife just became a citizen, so we studied this together. She was preparing for her naturalization interview. I'm no longer married to an alien. She was a resident alien, for the record. Anyway, Canada. And grew up in South Africa.
Montreal or Toronto?
Montreal.
Which bagels does she prefer?
I have no idea. She left when she was very young. They moved to Johannesburg at a very young age. So, you know, when you talk about corruption, our country, and not to make this about the United States, but our country is literally founded on the running away from an oppressive form, what we thought was, what we felt was, what we believed to be an oppressive form of monarchy, where everything is run by a central force that can be corrupt. We said, we don't want that. Let's divide the power that way. Hopefully things will be okay. So if something gets out of control, there's a way to shut it down. If that gets out of control, this will shut it down. 3, we're dividing, putting the keys in 3 hands instead of 1. Because absolute power corrupts absolutely. Because Malchut historically has ended in a very terrible way. Show me a reign of monarchs that didn't end in disaster. That was always perfect. Never happened. Open the history books. Every single monarchy has ended or has devolved into, at some point, into absolute terror. So, we'd be forgiven to think that Malchut is not a good idea. But it's not a good idea in the sense that all of these energies, when handed over to human beings, can be corrupted. But the real idea of Malchut, the real idea of leadership, even kingship, is, as I mentioned last week, and this is the focus today, the idea of servant leadership. The first leader, the first Jewish leader, sets the bar for all leaders in our understanding of what leadership is. That, of course, was Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, our teacher, a great teacher. Moses was, the Torah says about Moses, he was the most humble man on the face of the earth. What does that mean? Certainly Moses knew who he was, and he knew his own qualities, and he knew his own strengths. But Moses recognized a few things. Number 1, that his gifts were not self-generated. They were given from Hashem. They were entrusted to him by God. And therefore, it's a responsibility to utilize wisely and correctly. If we feel that this is ours, then we can do whatever we want with it. That's the danger. It's mine. I can do whatever I want. But if you feel that you're entrusted with something, then you have to use it for the purpose you were entrusted. It's the difference between money that's your own versus money that somebody gave. Somebody gives you $100 and says, can you give it to that person? You can't pocket that. It's misappropriation. But if it's your money, you can spend it as you wish. The question is, for all of us, do we feel like our gifts are our own, that we can squander or splurge wherever? Or is it Or is it from Hashem to be used for a certain purpose? That's one element that Moses had, this humility of recognizing that his gifts were not of his own creation. But number two, and perhaps more importantly, in our conversation today, is that Moses' humility lay in the fact that he recognized that to lead means not to dictate, but to understand and to listen. Because leadership at its core is about listening, and it's about not necessarily taking consensus and going by popular vote. It's not necessarily what leadership is, but leadership means that you're taking in, you're understanding the perspectives in the room. You're taking in, you understand what's going on, what people are feeling, what people are thinking, and then you move from there, taking all that into consideration. So a quick anecdote. Yeah.
When you say that, what happens
Right. So a startup is using the power of chachma, creativity, to create something new, either to solve a problem that no one's ever solved, or to solve a problem. What's the language? A solution to a problem that doesn't yet exist, something like that, right? To kind of like throw something into the future. But at the same time, the greatest leaders are those that have a great team. We know that. The greatest leaders are those that are listening to a team, that are working with collaboration. We know that any great, and this is true historically, that human progress happens with collaboration. When people are isolated in fields of knowledge, you don't have exponential growth. It's when you have mathematicians working with scientists, working with philosophers, working with spiritualists, right? That's when you have a proliferation of advancement. And we see this in fields. People that are truly innovative in fields are bringing in various disciplines that may seem out of this immediate space, because the understanding is that collaboration, listening to perspectives outside of one's own echo chamber, is invaluable in the march toward progress. Any great leader is working with a team and is open to listening and to new ideas and to fresh ideas that are outside of what they understand. Someone who says, I have all the answers, and I'll tell you what, it's going to be a very narrow vision. The nature of it. I forget which podcast I was listening to. It was like a year or two ago, but it was with stats. You know, when people, you know, started in Europe, when there was more cross-pollination of ideas, that's when ideas began exploding. That's the way progress happens. It's about an openness. There's a tendency to say, I have the answers, do what I say, I got it right. Like, I know what I'm talking about, this is the way it is. But hopefully, as we've gone through life, we realize that that's a very, very narrow, very myopic perspective, super narrow. The greatest progress happens when we are open. We're open to conversations. We're open to collaboration. We're open to discussions. I mean, today it's all about collaboration, right? You have like shoe manufacturers collaborating with hip hop stars. I mean, I know like athletes, like that's an old thing, right? But like, you guys with me on this? Yeah. So it's that collaboration. So anecdotally, what? Say it again. Right. Yeah. Collaboration means genuinely being open to hearing different perspectives, which makes everyone grow. It raises all of the ships. That's exactly. Board meetings for that purpose. What's important? So there's anecdotally, I forget which company it was. It might have been something associated with Disney, maybe DreamWorks, Pixar. Are both associated with Disney? Or is it once? Yeah. DreamWorks is Sony. Who's DreamWorks? Not. Is it Sony? Universal. All right. Anyway, so there was, and I've shared this before in previous occasions, that they used to have their board meetings, whichever company this was, they had their board meetings in the conference room and everyone sat where they sat. And so the CEO or the head of the division sat in one place and then the lieutenant sat nearby and et cetera, kind of fanned out from there. And the meetings always went as they went until one day there was the conference room wasn't available. And when the conference room wasn't available, they had to move to a different space. And in a different space, it was kind of last second, and everyone just sat down where they sat down. And because the hierarchical seating structure was broken down, so you had now like a junior, whatever I don't know what the terminology is, but somebody less senior in the company sitting next to someone more senior in the company. And that naturally led to, in the meeting, more almost permission for everyone to speak, or for those that didn't feel like they would be heard to speak. And now the next thing you know, that's the most productive meeting they ever had. Why? Because of the input, because of the collaboration. It's easy to think I'm the king, I'm the melech, or the queen, I have all the answers. It's braver and truer to say, I know I don't have all the answers. That would be crazy. If I had all the answers, I feel bad for all the answers. If I know everything, wow, the knowledge really is poor. I mean, like, if I know everything, then how much knowledge is there in the world? That's it. Only what I know is what exists. Wow. That's setting the bar of knowledge really low. I know what I know, and I know that there's a lot that I don't know. It says in Pirkei Avot, we read it yesterday. Eizehu chacham, who's wise? Halomed mikol adam, the one who learns from every single person. It doesn't say, by the way, halomed mikol professor, someone who learns from all the professors. Someone who, the question is ludicrous when you think about it. Who's wise? What kind of question is that? I know who's wise. The guy that went to Harvard or Yale, Stanford. Listen, when I give examples, I don't mean specifically those. It's whatever comes to my head. Anyway, so the question is, who is wise? It's like a rhetorical question. Who is wise? Before we even get to the answer, what kind of question is it? Who's wise? I know who's wise. The one with the most information is wise. The wisest person is the wisest. Who's wise? The one with wisdom. But that's not the answer. It's not the one with wisdom who's wise. It's the one who knows that wisdom exists outside themselves. That's a wise person. The mission, yeah. Go ahead.
Actually, it's all about listening. But it's not to know everything, but a whole book to the pages is how to acquire much better listening skills. Fascinating book.
That's how you end up knowing. What's crazy is that the Mishnah doesn't say who's wise, the one who has learned from everyone. It says the one who is learning from everyone. Because the definition of wisdom is not what you have, but your openness to learn. It's a completely different definition.
The opposite of a narcissist,
Right.
if you think about it.
Yeah.
A narcissist thinks he knows everything.
Yeah.
He's got it under control. He's smarter than everyone.
Yeah. Stop describing it. No, we can. Right. Yeah. No, it's like, right. And there is a human tendency. There's a to slip into that space, especially, right. So children, beautiful thing about children, amongst many things, is that children, by and large, don't have that. That creeps in later, but children are open to learning because they don't know. They don't know enough about they don't have a big of an ego to say, I know everything. Hopefully adults also, right? Kids are like, they're open to learning. Why? Because this is great. There's so much stuff out there. Right? Kids collaborate. Kids love collaboration. They get together, they create games, they create worlds, ideas. It's fantastic. Kids are great with collaboration and creativity. It's amazing. Then we get a little older. Then at some point, consciously or subconsciously, we say, you know what? I know everything. I'm good. You have an opinion? Yeah, I don't care. I got this. I got this figured out. I'm good. You have your opinion. Great. Wonderful. Doesn't affect me. And we shut down. Again, this shouldn't be, and I'm not saying it is exactly, but there's a susceptibility to moving into that space of saying, I know everything.
I don't know everything, but I certainly know what you need. You're 45 years
I-
younger, I know more than you know, I know it.
So what's interesting is that the Mishnah says, Ezel Chacham, who's wise, Halomei, the one who is learning, Mikol Adam, from every person, because everyone has something to say. There's this great, we were speaking about it at Fabrangan recently. There's a great organization called The Moth. Anybody familiar with The Moth? Like, like moths, The Moth,
MOTH?
MOTH. It's a nonprofit organization based out of New York, originally based out of Florida, out of Georgia. And they're all about storytelling, giving people a platform to tell their stories. There's 2 rules at a Moth storytelling session. Number 1, it has to be your story. Number 2, no notes. Just has to be, you open up, share your story. And one of the tenets of the Moth is that everyone has a story that's worth listening to. Everyone has something to share. You might say, that person, what do they know? They have something. And they have something that can help you. Baal Shem Tov taught us that everything a person encounters, certainly every person a person encounters, can benefit us in our spiritual path, in our spiritual service. These are important things. Anyway, what's the point? The point is, back to leadership. There's a tendency in leadership, the corruption part of leadership is to say, I know this is how we're doing it. This is to slip into dictatorship. That's the risk. The risk is that we slip into dictatorship. Judaism, Kabbalah, Chassidus encourages us to stay in that pure space of Malchut, which is the opposite of dictatorship. And to highlight that, Kabbalah uses the energies of masculinity and femininity. So let's now jump into that. Of the Sefirot, the spiritual energies, there are certain energies that are deemed to be of the of a masculine nature, and certain energies that are deemed to be of a feminine nature. Now, major point. Every human being, every soul has all 10 Sefirot energies, which means even the masculine ones exist in women, even the feminine ones exist in men, etc. So men and women both have masculine and feminine energies. But it's helpful. It's helpful in the construct of Kabbalah and Chassidus to break down these energies into masculine and feminine spaces. And I'll tell you why. The space, the energy of Malchut, of leadership, of kingship, has long been thought of. I mean, the word king evokes masculinity. I mean, king versus queen, right? But it long has been thought of in masculine terms, in domineering terms, in dictatorial, I don't know if I said that correctly, terms, right? This is the way we're doing it. In Kabbalah, Malchut is not a masculine energy. It's actually a feminine energy. In fact, Malchut is synonymous with the Shekhinah. If you're familiar with Shekhinah, what is Shekhinah? The divine presence, the divine immanent presence, which is a feminine, Shekhinah is feminine, feminine quality. So you have masculine energies, you have feminine energies. Malchut is a feminine energy. So what's the difference between masculine energies and feminine energies? There are many distinctions, but one way to understand the distinction is along the lines of what we've been discussing today. Is the movement, is this scenario, is this experience being driven top down, as it were? In other words, is it being imposed, or is it being cultivated through collaboration? Is there a receiving, like you said, listening, right? How to learn everything or how to know everything? It's about cultivating the listening, which is the idea of receiving. Receiving is the hallmark in Kabbalah, what defines something as a feminine energy. It's that receptivity. So being open to listening, being open to receiving, being open to collaboration, being open to working with the other, being open to working with another discipline that's not your own, being open to another perspective that's not your own. All of that are feminine traits. Again, that doesn't mean that only women can do that. Not what I said, but it's a feminine trait. So the masculine trait is, it's 6 days a week we work and Shabbat we rest. Kabbalah says 6 days a week are masculine and Shabbat is feminine. The energy of the week, the 6 days a week is masculine and Shabbat is a feminine energy. That's why Friday night we talk about the Shabbat queen, not the king, the Shabbat queen. Bo'ikala, arrive, bride, right? L'cha dodi, l'krat kala.
I don't want to feel about 6 days being masculine.
Hold on, 1 second. Hold on, good. I see you're ready to open up the collaboration. I don't know that I'm ready yet. Hold on. No, but let me define this very quickly. So in Kabbalah says 6 days a week, we look at the world and we say the world's broken. We need to fix it. On Shabbat, we say, you know what? We're open to this crazy idea that there might just be beauty right here. We're open to seeing the beauty in the world. We're open to cultivating the inner beauty as opposed to what's the word I'm looking for? We're opposed to cultivating inner beauty as opposed to imposing external notions of beauty on top of something else. So it's a masculine approach to say it's broken, fix it, or change it, or get rid of it. Or again, it's not men or women, it's masculine, feminine. Feminine approach would be, let's look and see. It's a masculine approach would be the child's crying, get over it, rub some dirt in it, right? That's a feminine approach will be, tell me about it, give you a hug, right? That type of approach. Again, it's not men or women, fathers or mothers. It could be either or, it could be both. The point is, one is in Kabbalah deemed to be the masculine approach and the feminine approach, and we each have both. So when we say that 6 days a week, it's a masculine energy, doesn't mean that women are not part of it. When we say that Shabbat is a feminine energy, doesn't mean men are not welcome. No, men and women have masculine and feminine. The question is, what are we pulling from within? Are we pulling that space of changing things or cultivating? Are we open to cultivation or are we imposing change? Ultimately, as we know, Mashiach is, right? Yom Shakulo Shabbat. It's a long Shabbat. Mashiach, the Messianic era, is deemed to be the era of Shabbat, the Shabbat era. And as such, the world is evolving more toward this. Again, we're talking about proliferation of technology and advancements in society that have happened through collaboration and openness and communication. There's never been so much talk about open communication as there is today. Back in the day, which I didn't live back in the day, but I'm just assuming back in the day, based on what, my impression of that is, off of their head. It just is what, that was it. But as we evolve into this kind of space of Mashiach, the space of Shabbat, this feminine energy, it's now accepted. It's more prevalent in our world. This idea of collaboration and understanding and open communication. This in Kabbalah, as we'll see, the analogy that's used for this is a cup. A cup, and I mentioned this before, that we'll get back to cups. A cup is an open, this one's half open. It's an open receptacle. It's open to receiving. Malchut, leadership, open to receiving. If the cup is full, nothing can go in. If a person says, I have all the answers, they'll never learn anything. If we empty the cup, now it's an open vessel. Now the magic can happen. It's when we empty the vessel. It's when we're open. So the cup, malchut, feminine energy, they're all synonyms. They're all synonymous in this mystical conversation. Does that make sense? Yes?
You said before the left side of the super was feminine, so like people so does that when you're describing this, it sounds like I'm hearing heavy that leadership is a lot about taking information, understanding it, put it all together.
Yeah.
So then, like it's a funny analogy, but I mean good leadership is having the most diverse children you can possibly make, the most ingredients to still taste good.
Yes. Yes. The greatest, I mean, just think about it. The greatest leaders are the ones who are listening. The greatest innovators are the ones who are collaborating. It's not even a question. Show me someone, huh?
We had this in this country.
Yeah.
The worst president didn't surround himself with the brightest.
Listen,
people because he thought it was smart.
Listen, I don't want to get political. I'm just saying. I'm not saying I don't want to get into any specific names. I'm just saying,
No,
but I think, yeah. Right. Exactly right. It's not about any specific leader, any specific name. The point is that the greatest leaders are the ones that are listening the most in every field. Show me someone who thinks that they know it all. They might be very successful, but it's going to be very limited because everyone's very limited. How can you go outside yourself if you're not extending yourself outside yourself by listening? It's just like, it's a truism. It's like you can't be more than you are unless you invite more into the circle. If you invite more into the circle, now you have more than you had. If you don't, you'll have what you had. That's it. It's like it's a very simple equation.
It doesn't pertain to each other. Sometimes the more ingredients do not make it better.
You're saying there's a certain point where in chalent, it's like we've hit the max. That's it. 6 ingredient chalent. That's it. It's like my wife's cheesecake. It's 4 ingredients. That's it. It's a 3-minute cheesecake. Done. Keep it simple. Yes. Oh, good. Excellent. By the way, and that's a very important, thank you for sharing that. That's a very important point. A leader is not, you're blowing in the wind because someone said something, you're going to do that. Yes, a big piece of it is taking in that information and then processing it and then figuring out what to do with it. So there is leadership in leadership, but the magic happens when you first take in. And this is actually a perfect. Don't worry, it's not going to be that. But it's important to note that we see these two energies, these two elements, these two roles within a cup itself. Right? A cup receives. So I put this cup underneath the hot water thing, and I emptied some hot water into this cup. So this cup acted as a receptacle. I don't know why I need another cup. All right. Yeah, well, but then I realized now it's just, yeah, well, no, I'm just going to do it into my mouth. And then this cup serves as the beneficiary, as the giver. So the cup is a receiver in its feminine energy role. And then it turns into a more masculine role of the, I don't say giver, but as the bestower, as it were, as I drink the water. So the same cup that's receiving is also now bestowing. So when it comes to leadership, right, we have the same dynamic. You have the idea of being open to the collaboration, and then you have the idea of, at some point, charting the course forward. This is what we're doing. This is how we're stepping forward. Right? This is the next step. So you have that openness to receive as well as the energy of giving. There is course. Of course, the example, and the example is going to be inside, which we're going to get to. We got to open up the books. Let's pass these around. One of the greater examples of this, one of the clearest examples of this, thank you, is the experience of childbirth, right? Which is a uniquely feminine gift. The idea of taking in, right? Step one, taking in, and then say collaborating, but then working on generating from that, like very much a bina, right? A bina type of where you take a seminal point, a seminal drop, as it were, and then developing it into the details. And then, of course, birth would be where it is now not on the receiving end, but the giving and the bestowing of life end. All right, we are up to, let's jump inside. We are on page 20. Hold on. 24 at the bottom. Now, we did this last time. We're going to jump into it and then go a little bit further today. Okay. Let's jump in from the bottom of 24, where it says Malchut the receiver. And again, I know that we started this last time, but we're going to pick it up from right over here. Malchut the receiver. All right. The explanation of the parable is as follows. Malchut, which we've talked about today, leadership, is called cup. Again, it's the opposite of the way the world sees Malchut. Cup, a receiver, recipient, receptacle, openness, collaboration. Tell me, pour into me. No way. Malchut is dictatorship. Okay. But in Kabbalah, Malchut is cup. This is the pure energy of Malchut before human distortion. Malchut is called cup, as in the verse written by King David in Psalms, Kos, Yeshuot, Esa, I raise the cup of deliverance. King David said this, referring to his level, the level of Malchut kingship. Of course, King David was a king, was a melech. David HaMelech, David the king. And this was a type of meta reflection. I raised the cup of deliverance. As the Zohar says, Knesset Yisrael. Knesset Yisrael is the source of Jewish souls on high, is called cup of blessing. Furthermore, Ma'orei Ar, a book of Kabbalah, writes that cup is the Yesod. The Nukva, cup is the secret of feminine energy, which is why Kos cup is the numeric equivalent of Elokim. So we have Elokim, which is also a, Elokim to Havai. We talked about the names of God. Sorry? Elokim, in this context, he's saying, I don't know if it's always feminine, but in this context, he's lining it up on that in that space. Elokim is really the energy of diversity, which is similar to this idea of collaboration, which is diversity. Why is Elokim diversity? Elokim is the energy of God that creates the multiplicity of creation, of creation. In other words, it says Bereshit bara Elokim, the beginning Elokim created. Elokim creates diversity. Elokim creates nature. Elokim and Hateva, which is nature, are the same numerical value. And it's also the same numerical equivalent of the word kos, cup, 86. It's all the same energy. It's all the same numerology. It's diversity. It's openness, collaboration, Elokim. Where God says, "Let us make man." Let us. Who's the plural? Right? There's a plurality there. There's an Elokim. Obviously, there's one God, but it's the energy of God that creates diversity. Malchut in general. Next paragraph is called cup. For just as a cup serves as a vessel to receive wine or water, so too Malchut receives all the revelation and radiance of the levels above it. Now, we didn't speak about Malchut in that context, but that is certainly what Malchut does. Malchut takes in, like a good leader, Malchut takes in all of the energies around it and above it. In the case of Malchut, it's the lowest of the 10 energies. So it's the cup that's taking in all of the other energies and takes it in. Now, he draws another analogy. We had cup, we've had Malchut, we've had Knesset Yisrael, we've had femininity, we've had Elokim. All of these are parallels. They're all the same on the same team. We're adding one more, and this is going to be a game changer. Speech. Just as speech is the vessel or similar to, in a way that speech is the vessel through which the powers of the soul, intellect, and emotions are expressed, so to the level of Malchut, which is called supernal speech, is the vessel into which the flow of all 10 Sefirot is drawn. And so I need to elaborate on this for a quick second. What is speech? Speech is our capacity to take our ideas and our feelings and convey them to someone else. So speech is like a cup. Speech is not the idea or the feeling. Speech is the tool through which that is transmitted like a cup. You take your idea, you put it into your words, and then you take your words and you pour it to someone else. You with me on this? Speech is a cup. You take your feelings, right? Let's say love, right? Oh, I love fish. I'm kidding, right? Love. You take your feeling of love, that's an emotion, right? The emotion, you pour it into your speech, it flows into your speech, and then your speech pours it to someone else, bestows it to someone else. So speech is like a cup where you take your ideas, seichel, and your midas, your emotions, right? You take your ideas and emotions, put it into speech, and then your speech, the cup, shares it with someone else. Similarly, let's continue inside. The name Knesset Yisrael implies that it is kones. It gathers into itself all the revelation and celestial radiance of the supernal Israel. In other words, the source of Jewish souls above is also this Malchut cup energy that is all about taking in the energies, taking in greater energies than itself. And for this same reason, it is called cup. As the Zohar writes, Knesset Yisrael is called cup of blessing, for Knesset Yisrael is the root and the source of the souls of Israel. And it's all about receiving light, receiving the energy from above. Hence it is written, the Lord is the portion of my inheritance and my cup, referring to the supernal Knesset Yisrael, which is the source of the souls of Israel and is therefore called my cup. So again, we have Malchut, we have cup, we have Knesset Yisrael, the source of Jewish souls, we have speech. All of these are the feminine energy, receiving energies, etc. Let's continue top of 26, and here's where we'll close it out with the end of this section. This is the significance that we mentioned before. This was last time, of the fragile cups, symbolizing primarily the supernal Knesset Yisrael and the souls of Israel below. What he says here is there was a measure to talk about fragile cups, hot water, cold water, etc. We're not going to get into that right now, but the point is there's fragility in the experience of being a cup, because when you're a cup, right? So depending on what's going in, that could determine the sustainability of the cup itself. Something too hot or too volatile, it could break the whole collaboration. If you have in a meeting, or if you have in any collaboration, one opinion that's a little too hot, you with me on this? You have someone that's like too domineering, that could break up the whole collaboration, right? Show me a successful band, and I'll show you where ego got in the way and where it broke up. Name your favorite band, right? Even the Beatles broke up. They broke up, right? Even the Beatles. I was always a Monkees fan. All right, 26. Yeah. 26. And in the parentheses, in the Midrash, the cup symbolized the creation of the world in general. This is because, he said, parenthetically, it's because the creation of the world stems from the aspect of Malchut, which is called cup, as mentioned earlier in the name of Moreh Ar. But primarily, cup symbolizes the soul of Israel. He's just saying that you have the general meaning of cup, the specific meaning of cup. In other words, generally it's creation. Specifically, it's the space of the souls of Israel, but it doesn't really matter. The point is that Malchut is the cup that contains, and as we'll see next time, it's also the cup that gives. Malchut is the energy that creates the worlds. Look in Kabbalah, it's Malchut that creates. Obviously, God creates, but God creates utilizing Malchut. And what is Malchut? A receiving energy. Because the greatest creation happens through first listening, collaboration, taking in. This is the feminine quality of leadership. This is, and the world we're slowly moving into this space again. And to me, it's clear that it has to do with the whole evolution of the world moving toward being ready for the Mashiach energy, which is a feminine energy. But it's clear that the feminine modality of leadership, which is always about listening and collaborating and not consensus, but it's a collaboration and listening. It's clear that is becoming more and more, to mix metaphors, the more dominant form of leadership, right? Today, dominant form of leadership being one in which it's not about dominance, but about collaboration and listening. More than ever, schools are built in such a way in which children are heard.
That's why females make better school principals, right? You don't wanna argue that point.
Who am I to argue this? I could never argue this point, right? No. And of course, Mrs. New is the principal here. So like, of course, director. So yeah. But again, the important thing to remember is it's not strictly drawn on male-female lines, although you would think that a woman would have, naturally more attuned to feminine qualities, a man more masculine. But again, your mileage may vary. It doesn't matter exactly how it falls in any specific individual.
Who's better than the king?
I don't know. We look at you to confirm all things all things UK. Anyway, the point is just to kind of summarize and to close it out for today. There is a tendency to think of leadership in domineering terms. So if I'm in charge, I get to tell people what to do. That's how typically we think of leadership. Many people think of leadership in those terms. Oh, if I'm in charge, when I become in charge, then what does that mean? If you're in charge, you tell people what to do. That's the definition of being in charge, right? No. According to Kabbalah, according to Chassidus, Judaism, it's all the same, right? Leadership is not about domination. It's not about dictatorship. That's not leadership. Leadership is collaboration, consensus, listening, learning, growing. The greatest teachers, the greatest givers are the ones who first receive something, are the ones who are open to learning. The greatest teachers are the ones who are still learning, still thirsty for knowledge. If I think I know it all and I'm going to share with you, I don't know. Yeah. You see it paralleled in all of the energies. 100%. Parenting. It works, yeah. And it really works both ways. It really works both ways. Malchut has this duality to it. The cup is the perfect example because it literally has both. The cup gives, but it first receives. And the more it receives, the more it can give. And the more limited what it received, the more limited what it's going to give. So yeah, we could stay in our lane. We could stay in our, no, that's the wrong phrase. We could stay in our spaces. We could stay in our echo chambers. We can stay in our, in our comfort zones. And then we'll give whatever we have, but it's going to be limited.
In that famous movie, The Da Vinci Code, they touched about the same principle. Feminine, divine, giving and receiving.
So I'm not familiar with it, but that's interesting. I've heard that it has a lot of Kabbalistic themes to it. Be an interesting read or watch, as it were. Yeah, but it wasn't. Yeah, I don't think it was meant. Yeah, the point is that leadership is at the core always a feminine quality. It's never a masculine quality. It's always meant to be a feminine quality. It's meant to be a quality in which we're open, we're listening, we're gathering, we're taking in. Yes, there is a space now to sift through all that and then to make a move, make a decision, plot the next step forward. But the first step of a cup is always to receive. And it's the cup that can really create something magical, which is why, again, we see just to kind of reiterate what I mentioned before, and we're going to get to this inside, the idea of procreation. It's not a masculine, the gift of life is not a masculine quality. It's a feminine quality. Because there's something that happens in the experience of receptivity. And then, of course, there's action, there's movement that happens. It's not passive receptivity. Listening is an active process. Collaboration is an active process, but it's that openness to receive that is at the bedrock of creativity. Yeah.
Two totally separate questions. One is thought the word for cup or vessel is a key, but I don't see that in the text, so I just wondered if there was a.
It is. You are correct. That is also used. Keli is used as well. What's interesting is that a keli vessel doesn't have necessarily the connotation of the second aspect of cup, which we haven't necessarily emphasized in the text, but which we've emphasized in our conversation, which is the idea of bestowing. Because usually a vessel, you could think of it as a bowl of apples, where you might take from that bowl ultimately, but the bowl itself is not physically moving into the giver role. Are you with me on that? It's more of like passive. It remains almost in that passive state. If you're thinking,
a pitcher and a cup.
a pitcher would work. And as a pitcher, even a pitcher, you first fill up the pitcher, and then the pitcher
But a cup
bestows. Correct. Yes. So a cup is, yes. So keli is correct, but I think a kos is an even more accurate. That's why he's using it here. It's an even more specific representation of vessel, in which both roles are represented. It both receives and then gives, and both are necessary. In other words, malchut. This is the wild thing about the energies of every world. There are 4 spiritual worlds. We can't really break this down right now, but in every world, malchut is the lowest energy of that world. It's the receiving part, and it's the top of the world below it. Malchut receives, and then it becomes the keter, the crown of the subsequent reality, the subsequent dimension of reality. So it's both receptivity and giving. But again, you can't give before the receptivity. And that openness to receive is where the true giving, that magic is stirred. I know that was one question.
Yeah, the question is, you use the word echo chamber a number of times.
Yeah.
Openness to receive. So I'm not really on social media. My understanding is that a lot of people on social media are in echo chambers and have not got much interest in receiving new ideas, going down the same narrow route. Given that, what do you think the prospects are for the world in the future if people are not receiving, not interested to meet new people and receive and listen to other ideas? If they're coming in this echo chamber of their lives.
I think one of the greatest travesties of our time is turning the marketplace of ideas into, and I'm going to use an American term now, into college football match, where everyone chooses a side and we're the best and you're the worst. That's been the greatest travesty. People have always seen the world differently. People have always had different ideas. That's been true since the beginning of time. That's normal. What's the aberration is the belief that only my opinion matters and only my opinion is correct.
But there's good at that.
Well, hold on.
Good at that.
Yeah.
Because
Okay, you're saying because
upside down world.
okay, all right, but we can slide into it in a positive way as opposed to the chaotic way. There's 2 different paths for Mashiach, and we're hoping for the positive way. But I think, to your point, I think it's very important that, and I'm agreeing with what you're saying. There's always been differences in opinion, but when 2 individuals, let's just break it down to 2 people, when 2 individuals can say, listen, we may never see eye to eye, but we're both going to be open to hearing the other person. Everyone grows from that. One of the great illustrations of this is, of course, in Jewish scholarship, where the entire Talmud is filled with disputes. Every page of the Talmud has disputes, Hillel and Shammai. And so, one of I think it was Rabbi Tolushkin, who wrote a biography of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he wrote that one of the hallmarks of the Rebbe was one of the things you could learn from how the Rebbe lived his life and how he dealt with people that disagree with him is how to disagree without being disagreeable, which is a skill. It's like, I don't have to agree with everything that somebody else believes, but how can I do that without being disagreeable? How can I do that in a way in which I'm open to listening, even if I'm not going to change my opinion, I'm open to listening, recognizing and respecting that there's another way to look at things. This is where love and respect need each other. Because if I only love my opinion, but I can't tolerate yours, that's not really love. Love that lacks respect is not real love. If I only love you insofar as what you do for me or when you make me feel good, that's not love. If when you're having a rough day, then I don't need that in my life. Your rough day. You're here, you're meant to make me feel good. You're having a difficult time. What is this? That's not a relationship. That's, I only love you because you make me feel good. What kind of relationship is that?
But it's getting very close to baseless hatred. It's just a step away.
Yeah. And in
And
truth,
that's why I say it's a sign of the government.
and I will tell you along those lines, the Rebbe Rashab, who's the author of this text, the fifth Chabad Rebbe, so he explains the baseless hatred. A person never says, I hate for no reason. A person always gives reasons. I have a whole laundry list of reasons why I hate that person. I can't stand them. But it's always baseless. Because there's always a way to collaborate. There's always a way to have a conversation. To shut down and to be. Anyway, we can continue. I'm going to let everybody go, but just to summarize, so we walk away with something concrete. If there's one thing that I could that hopefully that I would offer as a takeaway, it's being cognizant and conscious of this in our lives. Not only with regards to what I said before about love and discipline and all those in parenting, all of those are important things, but the core idea here that the magic happens when we're open to others. When we shut down others, when we shut out others, that's when the music stops. It's when we're in collaboration with others that the magic happens. So this week, as we get ready for Rosh Hashanah, let us remember this theme, and let's recall this theme that Barucheinu Avinu Kolonu Ka'echad, that we are truly blessed. We're truly blessed when we're together with each other. We're together with each other. It's that diversity that God truly loves, and that serves as a blessing for our lives. Yeah.
It seems like the good example that is like, yes, there's always disagreements, but then there's like a final,
Right.
not consensus.
Halacha. Yeah.
And then everybody has to listen to that decision.
Right.
Not just this side.
Right.
The people that disagree also listen.
Yeah.
And to me, that's what always seems to be the lack of collaboration. So you're only collaborating as long as someone's listening. As soon as there's an agreement by whoever it is, that is.
Right. They went by the majority. Yeah.
That the person on this side and guys on this side say, correct. And
Yeah.
that to me is the lack of knowledge.
Right.
Those receptivity or the leadership is still in office. So if you got to the place of that, the Gemara says,
This is the halacha. Right. Right.
Not just the people that are.
Right. We have the one. Yeah, that's one of the spaces where that disunity can come in. There's
People are still going about their
Like in
opinion.
America, there's no adherence to actual leadership. So I don't like what this one said.
yeah.
While we're collaborating, it's great. And as soon as the decision is this,
I don't agree with that.
then it's like, I don't know.
Right.
Ah,
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
And I wonder if the two are connected. Yeah, no, I hear that. And I wonder if the two are really connected. If there's, if we are more open to that collaboration, you felt like we feel like we're heard and we're hearing the other, then there is this greater sense of, you know what? Then I don't mind going this way for this, we'll go this way for that. And maybe we'll all have our space. Whereas in an echo chamber where it's only this way and not that way, then I'm not going to listen to you, even when it comes down to it. I wonder if the two are. I hear what you're saying. I think I hear what I'm with you on that, and I wonder if the two are interrelated on some level. Anyway,
It's hard for you to understand for us men to appreciate the wisdom that women have.
Well,
Women
that's
are
my
given-
next question is historically.
Yeah.
There isn't a place for feminine leadership. issue.
I know, that's according to this.
I don't understand that. Small, this is such a feminine issue.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know that I can explain historically the
All these guys in charge, they turn to their wives for the answers.
yeah, no, I understand. Where in Torah do we find feminine role, like women roles? Now, we, of course, historically there have been some, but by and large, it has been male. I would say that may be a well, there was, I mean, there were there was also Devorah. She was like she wasn't like, right. She was a prophet. Right. Yeah. By and large, yeah, all male. So yeah, and maybe that's been part of the problem. There's this unbelievable. You're saying it's part of the journey to get to a different place.
It is Torah's perspective that
There's a very, yeah, but it's
Because remember, even though the man is the king, he has to turn to his feminine side, which that's what I was saying. You can't understand how it is to turn to my feminine side to understand where you're coming from. The women never have to look at the male perspective. It's irrelevant to women because.
Well, all right, but here's what I'll say. There is a commentary on the Torah portion of Shlach, which is the Torah portion where the sin of the spies takes place. And there's you know this one, right? There's a commentary that says that what was the problem? That Moshe sent men. He should have sent women. That was the problem. Problem began that he sent men and he should have. Anyway, you have these mentions.
I think women started that story.
Yeah, well, it was a comment. It was definitely one of the accepted commentaries. Yeah.
Isn't there a problem that we're talking about like high level philosophical ideas, philosophical psychological ideas about how people are, and then comparing that with how historical reality played out, but then part of the reason why, let's say, us on the ground are not doing what philosophically we should be doing is we live in a broken world.
Right.
Like, of course, we don't implement it correctly because we're in this world that we're in. And because I almost look at the other way that you can point and say, okay, well, we've not been upholding these principles at all. You can also say, well, we could just be not even talking about these principles at all, that these could always be worse. That even in this, because what is that's practicing these principles properly, doing them perfectly, or even just doing it not perfectly? Because to me, the answer is either doing it not perfectly or not even trying
Right.
at all.
So it's having the conversation is already step one into the piece of it. And I think as we evolve, we're getting closer. All right. I want to wish everybody. So wait, next week is Erev, Sunday is Erev Rosh Hashanah. So are we doing a class in the morning? We might. Okay, stay tuned for the emails. Everybody getting emails? No? You're not getting emails? Okay, can you reach out to? No, from this class. No. Okay. Yeah, text me and then just remind me and text me and then I'll remind you. If you're not getting the email, let me know. We'll make sure that you're getting that. And I will, I'm going to make a decision whether or not we're going to be doing a class next week. But either way, wishing everybody a happy and healthy, sweet new year. Shana Tov Masuka. Yes.
I'm still getting mail from Kabbalah.
Yes.
And I feel I'm in an awkward position.
Oh.
Can't be in two places.
Right.
What's a nice way of saying that I moved on or?
Hold on, let me just close that. Bye, guys. We'll see you. Bye, David, Ray, and Fran. We'll see you guys. Have a Shavua Tov. Happy, healthy New Year. Aguka Ben Shar. And stay tuned for the announcement about by next week. Oh, also quick announcement. This week we're doing starting a three-part series on high holiday classes called High Holidays Unpacked. I think that's what it's called. Starting Thursday night, 7:30 p.m. All right. See you guys. Shavua Tov. Take care, everybody. Shana Tova. Bye, guys.